have spent a lifetime reading the last words of the living. As the most sought, after a state attorney in the city, I have drafted and executed over 3,000 wills. I have witnessed brothers tear each other apart over gold bars buried beneath childhood homes. I have seen devoted wives lean over their dying husbands whispering reassurances, only to quietly amend beneficiary clauses before the ink on the death certificate dried. Human nature does not reveal itself in moments of comfort. It reveals itself when money stands between love and ambition. Yet for all that I had seen, nothing prepared me for the final file that would drag me into hell. It bore a familiar name. My son's The courtroom was colder than usual that morning. Not physically, no, the temperature was precisely controlled, but emotionally sterile, detached, like a surgical theater where something living was about to be cut open. Julian stood at the center, immaculate in a navy suit I had once bought him. He was 28 tall, composed, and devastatingly convincing. He held a document in trembling hands, his voice cracking at precisely the right moments. "Your Honor, my father is not well." A murmur rippled through the room. He lifted the papers higher, as if they weighed more than they did. "This psychological evaluation confirms he is suffering from early onset Alzheimer's. He has already shown signs of memory loss, confusion, and erratic decision-making. I am deeply concerned that he no longer has the capacity to manage his assets or make rational legal decisions." He paused, swallowing hard. The performance was flawless. A single tear slid down his cheek. I watched it fall. I did not interrupt. I did not object. I did not rise to defend myself. Instead, I studied him. The angle of his jaw, the subtle tightening around his eyes, the way his fingers gripped the edge of the document, not out of fear, but out of calculation. Greed has a signature. I had seen it thousands of times, but seeing it in your own son is a different kind of education. And in that moment, as the judge leaned forward and the courtroom listened with sympathetic silence, my mind drifted, not to legal strategy, not to outrage, but to a small wooden desk 23 years earlier. Julian was 5. He had struggled to write his name. The J had been crooked. The U too wide. The L barely a line. I had guided his hand, steady and patient. "Again," I told him. He looked up at me, frustrated but determined. "Do you wish to respond to your son's claims?" The room turned toward me. Every eye waited. Every expectation hung in the air. I could have dismantled the report in minutes. It was amateur work, a forgery poorly constructed, riddled with inconsistencies. Only someone in my profession would notice instantly. I could have called experts, presented counter. Evidence exposed the lie. I could have destroyed him right there. Instead, I said nothing. I simply looked at Julian and smiled. They took everything with remarkable efficiency. Within a week, I was declared legally incapacitated. Within 2, my accounts were frozen. Within 3, I was relocated to a care facility on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place designed not for healing, but for waiting. Waiting for decline. Waiting for death. The nursing home smelled faintly of antiseptic and resignation. Peeling paint lined the corridors. The fluorescent lights flickered with a tired hum. Residents shuffled slowly, their eyes either vacant or quietly pleading. No one here had been powerful once, or if they had, no one remembered. That was the point. Julian visited exactly once. He stood at the foot of my bed, hands in his pockets, surveying the room like a man inspecting a property he had just acquired. "You'll be comfortable here," he said. I said nothing. He nodded, satisfied with his own performance. "The doctors agree this is the best environment for you." Of course they did. He had paid them well. He hesitated for a moment, as if considering whether to say something more. Then he didn't. He turned and left. And that was the last time I saw my son as my son. After that, the reports began to filter in. Not through official channels. Those were no longer available to me, but through quieter means. Old colleagues, for people who still owed me favors. Julian had wasted no time. He liquidated my Rolls-Royce within days, closed my personal accounts, auctioned my collection of antique watches. Pieces I had spent decades acquiring, each with its own history, each now reduced to a line item in someone else's ledger. But that was only the beginning. He moved into my office, my chair, my firm. The empire I had built over 40 years became his playground. And he played, oh, how he played. Champagne in the conference room, late night parties under the guise of client networking, trips to Las Vegas where he gambled recklessly, chasing losses with borrowed confidence. There were photos. There are always photos. Julian standing on a yacht, laughing with strangers who didn't know his name. Julian throwing chips across a table, convinced luck was a skill. Julian signing deals he didn't understand, because understanding requires discipline, and discipline requires character. And all the while, I sat in the courtyard of a dying institution, sipping weak tea from a chipped cup. The nurses thought I was fading. They spoke around me, not to me. Poor man, one of them whispered once. He just sits there all day, waiting. She wasn't wrong. I was waiting. Every day at precisely 4 p.m., I took my seat in the same rusted gazebo same posture, same stillness. In my pocket, I carried a pen, an old Mont Blanc black resin, gold trim worn smooth with time. To anyone else, it was just a relic. To me, it was a reminder of contracts signed, of power exercised, of decisions that reshaped lives. Julian thought he had taken everything. He had taken control. He had taken assets. He had taken my name. But he had overlooked one thing, not out of ignorance, out of arrogance. The final clause, the one document I had never shown him, the one provision buried so deep within the trust structure that only its architect truly understood its reach. In our world, we have a term for it, a quiet, elegant mechanism, a failsafe, a trap, a poison pill. The first crack appeared in the form of a debt, then another, and another. Julian's lifestyle required liquidity. Liquidity requires assets. And assets, when mismanaged, become liabilities. The firm's financial reports began to deteriorate. Subtly at first, then rapidly. Net assets dropped. Operational costs ballooned. Revenue streams weakened under the strain of neglect and poor decisions. Still, Julian pressed on. Confidence without competence is a dangerous combination. Then came the mistake, the irreversible one. To cover his gambling losses, Julian initiated a sale. Not just any sale. A core asset, one of the firm's most valuable holdings. Real estate tied to intellectual property rights. The kind of asset that doesn't just generate income, it defines stability. He didn't understand its importance. He only saw its price tag. The contract was prepared. The buyers were ready. The signature line waited. Julian signed, and the system responded. At first, nothing happened. Then everything did. The firm's internal network locked him out. Access denied. Accounts frozen. Authorization revoked. Every digital door slammed shut at once. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, slamming his hand against the desk. The senior partners exchanged glances. One of them, a man who had worked with me for 30 years, finally spoke. "Section 14 of the trust agreement," he said calmly. Julian frowned. "What are you talking about?" The man didn't raise his voice. Any attempt by the acting beneficiary to liquidate core assets for the purpose of offsetting personal debt triggers automatic insolvency protection. Julian's face drained of color. That's not possible. It is, the partner replied. The implications unfolded quickly, brutally. All transactions were reversed. All authority transferred. All actions during Julian's tenure were audited and classified, not as mismanagement, not as negligence, but as intentional misconduct. Every dollar he had spent, every asset he had sold, every decision he had made, reframed, reclassified, revealed. What he thought was ownership had always been conditional. What he thought was freedom had always been monitored. What he thought was victory had always been temporary. By the time the authorities arrived, the case was already built. All they had to do was read it. Julian Hawthorne was no longer the heir to an empire. He was its greatest liability, and liabilities are eliminated. The day he was removed from the firm, it rained, not dramatically, not symbolically, just steadily. As if the city itself had no opinion on his downfall, Julian stood on the sidewalk soaked, holding a document he didn't fully understand. A foreclosure notice, a termination of authority, a summary of debts so large they ceased to feel real. Cars passed, people walked by, no one recognized him. Or if they did, they didn't care. Power is loud when you have it. Silence is louder when you lose it. A black Rolls-Royce pulled up beside him, slow, deliberate, familiar. The window lowered, and there I was, not diminished, not broken, not forgotten, restored. I wore the same tailored suit I had always favored. My posture was straight, my eyes clear. Time had not weakened me, it had refined me. Julian stared, disbelief struggling against recognition. Until he dropped to his knees beside the car, rain mixed with something else on his face. Regret, or fear, or both. Please, he said. I didn't know. I didn't understand. I studied him, not as a father. As a man he looked up, his eyes searching mine for a father who was no longer there. Why? He choked. I'm your son. I didn't blink. A son honors his father's legacy, I said, my voice as cold as the rain. You were just a debt I finally decided to write off. I reached into my pocket, removed the pen, the Mont Blanc, and let it fall at his feet. Julian, I said quietly, I didn't give you money because I loved you. He flinched. I gave you money because I wanted to see who you really are. The rain intensified, or maybe it just felt that way. A $10 million check is just a check, I continued, but the lesson I taught you today. I paused, just long enough for him to understand. That's the real inheritance. The window rose, the world outside blurred. As the car pulled away, I glanced at the rearview mirror. Julian grew smaller, then smaller still, until he disappeared entirely. Some people spend their entire lives chasing wealth, believing it defines, protects them, elevates them. But money doesn't build character, it reveals it. And some people are so poor, all they have is money.